Truganini died over 100 years ago, the last full-blood Aborigine in Tasmania. During her lifetime, she saw the whole of her race become extinct. North of Antarctica and 200 miles south of Australia lies the island of Tasmania, about the size of Ireland or Ceylon. The British colonized Tasmania in 1803. There were then some 4,000 Aborigines. By 1876, when Truganini died, Tasmania was empty of Aborigines. It's the swiftest and most complete case of genocide on record. 12,000 years before, the rising sea had cut off Tasmania from Australia.
The Tasmanian Aborigines were the most isolated people in recorded history. For 12,000 years, they'd lived on their island on their own, and suddenly they were just wiped out. A terrible experience and totally beyond our capacity to imagine. I suppose I've spent several years looking at this landscape, looking for what the Aborigines left behind, finding sites where people lived, where bands of Aborigines had their camps, where they've been living for thousands and thousands of years. And then suddenly the place is abandoned, it's empty, it's left behind. And all this seemed to happen just yesterday.
There was another reason for the British interest in Tasmania, an important economic resource. Gangs of British sealers had been landing on the islands of Bass Strait for several years before the British took possession. Within a dozen years, the sealers had clubbed most of the seals to extinction. The sealers also raided the Tasmanian coast for Aboriginal women. It's a bizarre irony that this initial and brutal onslaught on the Aborigines should be responsible for producing their only descendants. From the mating of sealers and Aboriginal women, there has emerged an island community of mixed blood, a people who still carry some of the genes of the Tasmanian Aborigines. For most of their history, these people have been largely isolated from the rest of Tasmania. Their music is a direct legacy from the sealers of the early 19th century. Almost all of these people are descended from about a dozen original families who lived on various islands in the Straits and then finally gathered into one community on Cape Barren Island. There's been close interbreeding between the families, and this has left some of the present generation with features closely resembling the old Aborigines. During March and April each year, they go to various islands and collect the young mutton birds. For millions of years, the mutton birds have flown from Alaska to spend the southern summer on these islands and hatch their young. Mutton birding was introduced to the early sealers by the Aboriginal women. As the seals dwindled, the island communities relied on mutton birds instead. The Aboriginal women had been abducted for sexual purposes and also to provide labor. It was their knowledge of hunting which enabled the community to survive.
I'm a descendant, I'm not Aboriginal. I'm only a descendant of one. Just compare the Aboriginals that were here to the way of living of the descendants today. There's a hell of a difference. When they just wipe the old fellas off, they've got no chance of doing that to the ones that are descendants.
Annette Mansell is president of the Cape Barren Island Community.
Yes, in money.
There are no Aboriginals. And then there's not much in any of us. There's probably I don't even think there's a half caste in Tasmania. I think it goes from the quarter to the 1/8 and what have you down that way. There's no tradition in Tasmania of the Aboriginals. I don't think you can find any half caste, quarter caste or any caste in Tasmania that talk the Aboriginal language, in Tasmania that is.
No, I don't really class myself as Aboriginal. I can't speak the language. We don't know how many there was. Therefore, why should we be called Aboriginal? No one can prove it. Sure, I can't prove it. I'm sure no one else can.
Well, I don't know. I'm like everybody else. It's just history. I don't know anything about it, and I honestly don't think there's anybody alive that could tell you anything honestly and truthfully about the old Aboriginals. It's only history, what we've learnt, as you've learnt. It goes about any kind of person, you know, French or otherwise. It's only what they've been told, and it traditionally goes on, so that's therefore it's only history with everything. This is the way I feel about it. And from what I've read, they were given a hard time years ago.
The wiping out of the Tasmanian Aboriginal race is a history which is largely unwritten. During the first 25 years of their colony, the British made no pictorial record at all of the Aborigines. The now empty landscape is the only witness to most of what happened.